about not speaking yet, because as usual you are on mute, and I will tell you when you have to be quiet. Um, Chris, if you could try not to breathe so heavily as well. We tend to hear you breathing during the intro. Uh, okay. Sorry. It's ready, yeah. I just need to sign into my account. Just gonna check that everything's okay with YouTube. Okay, I see it online. Yeah, yeah, you are. Speak again quickly. That's that shouldn't be happening. It's on. Are you sure? Well, okay, yeah, I'm not muted, but oops. I've
On this episode of Motorsport recently, we look back at the N24, the French Grand Prix, IndyCar at Road America, and the Bern E-Prix. This is Triple Crown Racing. Let's get into it. Hello everybody and welcome to Motorsport Recently, where we will pretend the first couple of minutes before the broadcast was meant to start didn't happen.
sorry.
My name is my name is Jack McKenzie, and joining me on the mic is the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary. Before we get into anything, actually, I should explain something. So if you will remember from the show last week, I asked Chris to bring a box full of money in it. To put in every single time he talked about the Keating car when he wasn't meant to. But I forgot to actually say what I wanted him to do with that box of money. Now,
No, you didn't forget. You kept it under your vest.
no, anyway,
Yes.
whatever the reason for it, I didn't actually tell you, but now I am actually going to tell you. And what I wanted you to do with that box of money was to send it to the ACO headquarters in France. So if you could just them the money or send a check equivalent to what that was, then that would be much appreciated. Before we get into the news today, of course, Darrell Waltrip had his last commentary outing with NASCAR last week, and obviously he's a very important figure in the world of motorsport, in the world of NASCAR, so I'd like to dedicate this episode to him.
I hope so.
You see, I remember him as Darrell Cartrip from Cars 1. That was the first and pretty much only time I ever came across him within motorsport, since I don't watch NASCAR. So to me, whenever I think of that name, I always think of the original Cars, which is interesting. But anyway, yeah, definitely a an experienced and well-liked commentator, and I hope he had an enjoyable career. I'm sure he did.
I remember him from TNN. The Nashville network, when they used to do NASCAR until 2000. He actually would come by and do the what was then the Busch Grand National Series, broadcast for TNN at New Hampshire and Rockingham and Phoenix and all the races they did. He'd also do ARCA and even some truck stuff for them. And there was this one line that I remember him saying. It was in 1994 at New Hampshire. He was covering a Busch North race. And he was saying that, like, because he had just gone back off the track from a practice session, and he said that the track was breaking apart a bit like O.J. Simpson's Alibi, which made
Oh goodness.
which prompted Mike Joy to actually go film at 11.
Well, whatever the case, great commentator, and we hope he enjoys his retirement. Back to Jack.
Right, we're dedicating this one to Daryl Waltrip / Daryl Cartrip. Buggity, buggity, buggity. Let's get into the news.
Oh boy.
To do it, I just had to. Right, so we'll start with Formula E from Switzerland. If you want to change to that graphic now, who would actually?
Well, we actually don't have. We actually don't have that graphic, but whatever the case.
Oh yes, we don't have graphics.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think I'll take Formula E since I saw it. I don't know if either of you saw it. But whatever the case, it was French driver Jean-Eric Vergne on pole for the Swiss E-Prix. Behind him, lining up in second, was Kiwi driver Mitch Evans. As the lights went green for the start of the race, Vergne was able to keep first place into the chicane, and then there was a massive pile-up. There were two incidents before the first lap was over, both of which took place at the same time at the chicane. The chaos of lap 1 started at the front of the midfield. Buemi ended up in the barriers. Robin Freintz and Jerome D'Ambrosio also became casualties of the first lap pile-up. This caused a very long and tiring red flag. Once the race finally started again, after some tension between drivers and the FIA about how the drivers would restart where they qualified, the likes of Da Costa, De Grassi and Massa were all disillusioned by the decision. The race went back to green, and some very interesting and tenuous battles ensued. This included frontrunners Vergne and Evans. Throughout the whole race, the Jaguar applied more and more pressure to Jev, but didn't crack under the pressure. Sam Bird also showed off his experience after performing the most perfectly executed overtake on Maxi Gunther around the outside of turn 3. The race ended with very few cars finishing. The first of the retiring cars was the Mahindra of Verline. Attack mood was certainly a help to Mitch Evans, and despite setting fastest lap a few times and getting extremely close to the French driver, it wasn't enough even when it started to rain. There's no denying that Jev's performance and defending skills are possibly at the highest level. After the 11th race, and only 2 races in New York to go, it's Jean-Eric Vergne who leads the championship, 38 points ahead of teammate Andre Lotterer, who is second. Behind the two DS Techeetah boys, it's Lucas Di Grassi, who looks to have a hopeful 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. As for the Constructors' Championship, it's confirmed that DS Techeetah team will win, as they have pulled a 58-point lead to 2nd place team Audi Sport. British racer Sam Bird's team, Envision Virgin Racing, completes the top 3 teams in the championship with 148 points. That article was written by Freya Edwards, and thank you to Freya for that.
I'll go through some of the people who didn't finish the race. So Robin Freintz was out on the first lap. Eduardo Mortara ended up retiring. Or actually, I'm not entirely sure what happened to him. But anyway, then Pascal Wehrlein, he obviously retired. Oliver Rowland didn't finish either. And Jose Maria Lopez was disqualified. I'm not actually sure why,
though. Toyota into a gravel trap?
No. I don't know either, but I can look that one up if you'd like.
Anyway, yeah, I also, on an unrelated note, I have actually had an epiphany, and that no one in Formula E drives for the Jaguar team will ever get a penalty because they will walk into the steward's office and they will say, "Oh, I'm awfully sorry, I caused a 24 car pileup in my Jag." And then
Exactly.
I knew that was coming.
and then
mind awfully sorting this flag air warm up the Jag?
That's
and
brilliant.
then the race stewards will say, "Yep, that's absolutely fine. No need to worry about that." Anyway, so
Okay,
we had
Jose Maria Lopez's disqualification, sorry, was due to him exceeding his maximum power usage. So basically a technical infringement.
right, and then also, I want to also touch on the fact
Where
that
did he finish before he was disqualified? Last?
I'm not entirely sure. Sorry. Go ahead, Chris. Jack. Sorry.
so I also want to point out that this race has had what Formula E has become known for this season, a massive pile up.
Yes, and as Freya pointed out, it was actually caused by two separate incidents. Looking at the replay of it, it was just that again, the track was too tight and narrow. Surprise, surprise. Of course, Verline was being pushed by the pack behind, as of course is going to happen with a braking zone and a bunch of corners like that. And he had nowhere to go but the barrier because the car in front of him had nowhere to go but the barrier or the track, and of course it's going to take the track, meaning Verlaine gets forced into the wall. As a result, you end up with a road blockage and a red flag, and that is going to happen every single time until we start going to tracks that are more suited for racing.
That's sort
And
of
then
become a pattern
they
this
get rid of
season.
Mexico. And they get rid of Mexico from the calendar, which was the closest thing to a proper racing circuit.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really? I didn't know that, actually. I like Mexico. Oh, actually, no, I think I remember that now, actually. I'm not entirely sure, actually.
Well, whatever the case, yeah, it was no one's fault but whoever designed the track, and well, basically the FIA's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It has sort of become a pattern that in this season that, oh, look, there's been another enormous pile-up, and it was yet another wreckfest. There was
Wait a
only
minute. Wait a minute. Did someone other than did somebody other than me call out the FIA on their bad officiating?
I mean, okay, yeah,
Caitlin,
Formula E is not being run well, and
I'm off the hook! Yay!
yeah, you are, Chris, and you're right, Formula E is not being run well. But anyway, back to Jack.
No.
Okay. Oh, and you won't guess what's just happened. Phoenix just shared the Formula E graphic with me. Oh, and the Formula One at France graphic as well.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't add them now that the podcast has started, so really sorry
Yeah.
about that. There's nothing I can do. Sorry, Finnick. Great work as usual. It just, we
Too
didn't
late.
get them in time. Yeah.
I might
Anyway.
use it as a wallpaper. I'll use it as my desktop wallpaper.
Oh, yeah, you do that. There we go.
I might do that. We found a home for it.
Thank you anyway, Finnick.
Anyway. Yeah. Okay, DS to Cheetahs wrapped up the Constructors' Championship, so that's a good job from... Actually, hold on. No, they haven't wrapped up yet, have they? Because there's still 2 races to go.
According to... Okay, I can double check that. They have... Oh, heck. I'm not entirely sure. According to Freya, they have, although...
I don't think they have, actually, because they
Is
can...
New York double points?
I don't think it's double points, but it is a double header.
Oh, wait.
Okay, yeah, I
They've
don't
wrapped
think
up.
they've quite wrapped it up, but they're pretty close. I'm not sure if that's what... not blaming Freya for that or anything, mistakes happen, but...
If they can win in New York 1, they can wrap it up. But
Okay, well, whatever the case, there you go.
Right. So overall thoughts on this race? Was it a good race? Was it a bad race?
Didn't see it.
I
I
You see, all Formula E races feel quite similar to me. I don't really. I suppose it got kind of exciting towards the end with the weather, and that was actually quite a good finish. The start was pretty awful and messy. It was just a Formula E race, in my opinion, and well, I'm looking forward
well,
to seeing what the championship finale can do in New York.
are actually right because almost every single race this season has followed a similar pattern. There are some good battles on track, but then there's also an enormous pile up. So, I mean, at least they're consistent.
Yeah. Okay,
Should we
well there
move
you go.
on?
Let's do
Yes.
so.
Right, we'll move on to the French Grand Prix, which wasn't very interesting.
Good night.
Yes, good night. For Lewis Hamilton, this was the perfect race weekend. From the first lap to the last, he had the French Grand Prix under his command, dominating to such a degree that he could try and set fastest laps on used tyres. He could go for a pit stop and change onto fresh ones, a fresh set of tyres, and still re-emerge in the lead ahead of his teammate. While this was a familiar Hamilton masterclass, the lack of threat in his mirrors was actually embarrassing. Other than Mercedes dominating once again, the most interesting action on track was Lando Norris dealing with hydraulic issues, getting overtaken by several cars, and Daniel Ricciardo getting a very costly penalty. And that's pretty much it for the French Grand Prix.
Okay,
What?
I want to give my opinion on the penalty and what's been going on in F1 recently. So, as you know, I absolutely love Formula One, and I always hate to admit that anything is wrong with it because in my eyes it can do no wrong. But I have to admit the last couple of races have shown me that Formula One is in a bit of danger. And this is the first time I've said this in years. But basically, and you're gonna like this, Chris, I have to put it again down to bad officiating. I don't see the Mercedes dominance as a particularly big problem. It's annoying, yeah, but things like this have been happening all the way through Formula One history, and you know it's going to happen again. Hopefully, the cost cap can start to deal with it. But whatever the case, that's not the problem I want to look at here. The main problems that I see are, firstly, you have inconsistent stewarding, as we saw in Canada. You know, Vettel getting a penalty for things that people have got away with in the past. I think I said this in the last podcast. What they really need is to have a consistent panel of stewards who are the same every time and who know what they're talking about, if that makes sense. And to be honest, I think that the drivers should be able to elect the stewards as well. Um, and alongside that, I also think that the French Grand Prix has shown us that there is a problem with the circuits. I think that the Ricciardo penalties were absolutely fair. How the rules are set out, they have to be stuck to, and Ricciardo did break two rules in effectively 3 corners. The 10-second penalty, completely fair if you ask me. The problem is that the circuit allowed him to do that. The circuit really shouldn't allow him to do that. And the way I see this being solved is a way that actually Karun Chandok suggested during the 2017 season, which is that if you have a thin strip of grass by the side of the circuit, you can keep your massive runoff area. You don't have to make it so that cars, you know, get beached or crash whenever they go off, thus saving a lot of money, of course. And yet somehow, well, not somehow, but yet alongside that, you also don't have drivers going off the track and gaining advantage. And that is a really, really simple fix, and I don't get why they haven't done it yet. You know, they implement things like sausage curbs, which break the cars and cause suspension failures and big accidents. I hate that. That completely goes against the point of a runoff area. You may as well have a grass bed. But, you know, and then they add fake astroturf, which doesn't really slow the cars down that much and just makes it really slippery when wet. With just a thin row of grass, Honestly, I think that could save the FIA all sorts of controversy, and it could probably really help Formula One as it is at the minute. Do you agree?
That sounds like a good fix.
Having
I
just woken up from the French Grand Prix, I can tell you, Caitlin is dead on this. And first of all, this season is actually the first Formula One season that I can remember in my 30 years of existence where I've actually had a good night's sleep.
Oh. Okay,
Oh my goodness.
it's not that bad. I think
It's a known cure for insomnia.
Okay, we have had a few dull races so far this year. I think that's coincidence.
Few.
I really don't think.
Phew!
I don't.
Which
I mean,
one
it's
was the
been all of them.
highlight? Round 1, 2, 3, 4,
Chris,
5? Which
I did.
weekend is
Okay,
this?
Chris, I did quite like Monaco. Apart from that, yeah, we've had a relatively dull start to the season. I reckon that is partly coincidence. We have had seasons like this in the past. Really, we just need to wait, give it time, and it will throw something up again, because this is Formula One, and Formula One is unpredictable, and it always produces excitement. This Grand Prix this weekend at the Red Bull Ring, I would be surprised if this isn't the best race of the season so far. I would be very surprised if it isn't.
It already has been.
Okay, so my message is to the FIA, get your act together. To the fans, stop just panicking and complaining and stuff. Give it time. Formula One will reward us again. Good things come to those who wait and all blah blah blah. Formula One is still Formula One, and we will get good racing again. It's
What are you
just
What
gonna
are you
happen.
talking about? What are you talking about? The Formula One season or my dating life?
Chris.
Anyway,
Will Chris find bliss?
Aw.
I remember that. Anyway, anyway, Chris's love life aside, I also want to talk about Lando Norris, who actually did extremely well while dealing with the hydraulics issues, and I think he's to be commended on that drive.
Lando's the star of the future.
Lando is
Caitlin.
a very, very interesting character of the likes I have never experienced before in Motorsport. He has the biggest internet presence, biggest internet personality of any Formula One driver in history. He has so much enthusiasm. He always looks like he's just loving life. There's a viral video actually that came out just before the Grand Prix at the weekend, where he was sitting in his car before the formation lap, and there was music playing on the tannoy system, and he was bobbing his head and absolutely digging it. And that's just Lando. He makes memes, he makes jokes, he doesn't take it seriously when something goes wrong for him.
And he's a sim racer.
Absolutely. He has the psychological side of sport absolutely 100% nailed. And you never see that from the young guns. It's just, when you have that nailed, honestly, that is what I look for in a young driver. Not pure outright pace, not anything like that. I look for whether they have the psychological aspect nailed, which he has. And we've seen already that he is ridiculously fast at times. He's qualified Q3, I think more times than his teammates so far this season, and definitely more times than cars that should have done it more than him. I was really reluctant to say this when Lando came into the sport, as of course, he is quite scrawny. He's not got the physicality that some of the other drivers did. I didn't think he would do well. He has really surprised me, and to be honest, I do very much see him being a star of the future.
Anyway, well, we should have expected that, because even you said yourself in one of the first couple of episodes that Lando is just Nando with an L plate.
Absolutely.
If I remember, you said that as well.
I said that after Bahrain, yeah.
Has Lando Norris dethroned Guido Bantegard?
Oh.
Yes, surely.
Careful what you say there.
Sorry, Guido.
I
Careful
might
what
have-
you say there, because Guido van der Garde is a legend.
Oh,
I
he
might
is.
actually have a look at
Sport.
I might actually be the judge, and I'm going to have a look at his Instagram page to see if I think he's dethroned Guido.
Jack is currently going through a tunnel.
Well, yes, I was going through.
He's going through the channel tunnel, folks.
Oh,
Going to
golly.
get my phone. I was going to get my phone because I want to see if Lando Norris has dethroned Guido Bantegard.
Well, you can never tell. You can never tell in terms of like number of followers or whatever. You need to actually check out the quality and everything. Because
That's what I'm doing.
I expect that Lewis Hamilton probably has more followers than Lando Norris, and let's face it, Lewis Hamilton is not the king of social media.
Yeah, he blocks people. Oh wait, no, that's Cody Ware. At least he doesn't. At least Lewis doesn't block people. Cody Ware, if you're watching me, unblock me, you slow-moving tractor.
Yeah, you are never getting unblocked.
Right,
He doesn't
we should
like
move
being
on.
called out.
Okay, Chris, sorry.
We should probably move on to the IndyCar race at Road America. Now, I'm not sure if you want to tell us about this
I'll
because I
take
can
that
do
one.
this. All right then.
Colton Herta qualified on the pole for the IndyCar race at Road America, followed by Alexander Rossi and Will Powell. So the stage was set for an awesome race at Road America for the Rev Group Grand Prix, which, by the way, Rev Group, for those that don't know, is a bus dealer. So
Oh my goodness.
a bus spotter is reporting on this story.
It's
They
like
actually
your
sell pretty good vehicles too.
it's like your greatest dream, buses and motorsport combine.
Actually, I'll get to something in a minute after I do the recap. But
Okie dokie.
something happened in Montreal a few years ago. But Alexander Rossi took an early lead at the start before Scott Dixon was spun by Ryan Hunter-Reay. Rossi would dominate early on and lead the majority of the race. The ones to watch, however, were Colton Herta and Scott Dixon, with Dixon on a recovery drive from a bad pit stop, and Herta trying to fight his way back through the pack after losing ground. The race really hotted up in the later stages when Colton Herta's tires expired, like the parrot in the Monty Python sketch.
I'm the only one that Chris is cutting out for.
A little
I'm not
bit,
cutting out.
a little bit, but I think it's coming through okay. Sorry, carry on, Chris.
All right, fair enough.
James Hinchcliffe capitalized and got through on Herta. Herta was now under attack from Dixon. Herta would go back through on Hinchcliffe, and then Dixon got through on Hinchcliffe. Dixon attacked Herta on the start-finish straight and got through. Herta's tires led him vulnerable to rookie Felix Rosenqvist, who got by Herta. Herta would then have to defend Hinchcliffe, but would run wide onto the grass and lose the place. However, the victory would go to Alexander Rossi in, let's face it, a master class of driving by Rossi.
It was a Lewis Hamilton-esque drive from Alexander Rossi. That was fantastic.
Now, let's not say things we can't take back. But honestly, Alexander Rossi, I've said this before this season, Rossi is, without a doubt, one of the best IndyCar drivers that's come along in quite some time.
He is, actually.
He's consistent. He's always there at the end, and come on, that was a masterclass of how to.
Yeah, once again, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I know he's not known for his F1 experience, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best Formula 1 driver never to score a point. That's my personal opinion. Anyway,
that drive.
He's undoubtedly the best IndyCar driver that Grand Prix racing has ever produced.
Anyway, at the current moment, after that drive, Alexander Rossi is now 7 points adrift of championship leader Joseph Newgarden. Simon Pagenaud is in. So Joseph Newgarden is on 402 points, Alexander Rossi is on 395 points, and Simon Pagenaud is on 341 points. So it looks like for the foreseeable future, the championship fight will be between Joseph Newgarden and Alexander Rossi.
Go Rossi.
Obviously unbiased here. And of course, the podium for that particular race, so Alexander Rossi won, and it was Will Power in second and Joseph Newgarden in third place. By the fact that a driver dominated most of the race, that was actually a superb, absolutely superb race.
Wasn't it, though? And apparently the television ratings came out for that event, and it was actually one of NBC's highest rated races since taking over the IndyCar contract.
I especially like the team radio from the driver behind, who asked, "So, just tell me, out of curiosity, how far ahead is Alexander Rossi?" And the reply from the team was 18 seconds, and he just sat there and went, "Wow."
18 seconds.
I wonder which one it was.
You never get that in IndyCar. You can tell that everyone in IndyCar respects and admires Alexander Rossi, and well should they, because, you know, it's Alexander Rossi, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to be seen as one of the greatest, or the greatest, IndyCar drivers of all time.
His drive reminds me of one of... It reminds me of a combination of Rick Mears, Al Unser Jr., and Emerson Fittipaldi. How they would basically, especially when Unser was driving for the old Valvoline car, the Gallus Racing car, he would go on these drives where he would, like, basically go from lights to flag, or from flag to flag.
However, we have to remember that it's still Joseph Newgarden in the lead of the championship, and he actually had a pretty good race as well, finishing third. So for all of the credit that Alexander Rossi's being given for his season so far, Joseph Newgarden's actually been statistically more successful so far. Although, yeah, he's still yet to pull out
well,
the drive
thing
like
about
that.
it is, Alexander Rossi's probably thinking to himself, why did Newgarden finish third? Why won't he go away? Let me take the lead of the championship. But of course, he would say that jokingly because they have a really good rapport. And, like, I have to say that Newgarden is showing, like, unparalleled consistency.
Absolutely. No,
He reminds me of Rick Mears.
Rossi's one of the greats. Newgarden is also one of the greats, and I'm loving hearing about their championship fight. I say hearing about because I'm not actually able to see it.
I watched the highlights on either Motorsport on NBC on YouTube or the IndyCar YouTube channel, which the highlights are absolutely superb. So if you can't watch it, I do highly recommend watching the highlights of these races.
I do.
Right. I mean, so interesting was almost the was received on social media, because if you see all the posts of videos of battles from this races, I've noticed that there's actually a lot of F1 fans in the comments saying this is brilliant, this is superb, this is so much better than Formula One. I might actually stop watching Formula One to go watch this.
I hate it when people say that. They don't have to compete. We can have, like, there are different racing categories for that exact reason, because they are different. we don't need to like stop watching one racing series or say this is better than that. IndyCar isn't supposed to be a competitor to Formula One. It isn't supposed to be a just because you like IndyCar doesn't mean you have to like hate Formula One, and it doesn't mean just I hate it. I hate it when people say that.
All I can say is we're sorry we have a better on-track product than Formula One.
There's no such thing as better. Like flippin' heck.
Anyway,
and the next race, by the way, is my home. I wanted to say that. The Honda Indy Toronto is the next event on July 14th.
Anyway, but with what Caitlin was saying before, the fact of the matter is that motorsport is a form of entertainment, and people will watch motorsport on the television to occupy themselves.
Okay,
now if they're
shut up and enjoy it.
No, but the fact is that some people will be turned away by boring racing in Formula One, and they'll say, right, what's actually better at the moment? IndyCar's better at the moment, so I might just skip the Formula One races because they're boring, and then watch the IndyCar race because they're more exciting. I mean, that's not my personal opinion. I like to watch all of them, but the fact of the matter is that is the mentality of some people, and because IndyCar is so good and F1 is not particularly good at the moment, that might be something that Formula One actually has to take note of, that IndyCar are having awesome races like this.
I'm glad that's not your viewpoint because I am flippin' bubbling. Okay, let's move on.
Right, well,
like I said, by the way, the next race is the Honda Indy Toronto in Exhibition Place in 14 days, 21 hours, 41 minutes, and 44 seconds from now.
Yeah, but before Caitlin bursts a blood vessel, let's move on to the Nürburgring 24 hours. Now, who would like to tell us about the Nürburgring 24 hours?
Ooh,
can I? Cause Manta.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Manta.
I know you've been bursting to do this.
Pole position for the 2019 24 hours of the Nürburgring went to the Mercedes-AMG GT3. In probably its last appearance at the ring, of Black Falcon and Maro Engel, Dirk Muller, Manuel Metzger, and Adam Christodoulou, which was able to lead away at the start as behind the incidents before two-thirds of the field had, with Augusto Farfus in the Schnitzer Motorsport BMW M6 GT3 spun out of the race at turn 2. However, it was Porsche and Manthey Racing that would go on to dominate, with Lawrence Vantor, Earl Bamber, Michael Christensen, and Kevin Estra in the number 911 Grello Porsche. Grello, Jack. Taking the lead on the Dottinger Hohe in hour 6, with Estra at the wheel and leading until the following afternoon. And can I just say, by the way, and Caitlin, I know you saw the race too, what a move that Estra did.
I didn't see that bit. I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Through the grass on the Dottinger Hohe heading down into Tiergarten.
Whoa. I'm going to look it up, actually.
2 wheels on the grass. I recommend it.
Okay, I'm going to absolutely... Okay, Kevin Estra passed for the lead, find it. Alright, let's have a little look at this. So
while Caitlin's doing that...
Okay, I'm going to give you a commentary. He's just coming out of Galgenkopf. Is he the driver behind Dirk Muller? Oh, I think it's going to happen about a lap from now. Oh, yeah, okay, here we go. Slipstreaming Muller's Mercedes, and everything's frozen. Jolly good. Goes to the left. Muller starts to defend. He carries on going because he sees there's a TCR to the right. That's very, very ambitious, especially for a 24-hour race, and makes it stick before the Tiergarten. I'm not sure if that was good. It looked mainly... It looked quite reckless, if you ask me. He could very easily have gone past to the right. I think he was just nervous that Muller was going to crowd him into that TCR and force him to back off. But yeah, whatever the case, made it stick.
As Ayrton Senna used to say, if you go for a gap, that's no longer there, you're no longer a racing driver.
Yeah, but if there's a better gap to the other side, then
I actually thought that Muller's defense was a bit dirty.
no, not at all.
It looked like, because I honestly thought there was like that you could only defend one way,
Didn't he?
but he kept moving.
Okay, well, still, congrats to Kevin Estre for pulling that off and not dying in the meantime. And yeah, that was that.
Glorious move. A glorious move. Now, for the second week in a row, a major 24-hour race was decided by a car losing time later on. Ironically, this car had a sensor detect a non-existent or very light puncture on the final lap. However, this time the blame was on the driver. At around 9 a.m. local time on Saturday morning, with 6.5 hours to go, Lawrence Vantor sped in a slow zone. Several hours of deliberation led to the car receiving a 5-minute and 32-second penalty, wiping out its comfortable lead. This handed the lead to Pierre Kaffer, Frank Stippler, Frederick Vervisch, and Dries Vantor. Yes, Dries Vantor. In the number 4 Team Phoenix Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo. Despite closing in, Lawrence Vantor and Estre were unable to catch Vervisch and Vantor, and Audi took a surprise victory. The 4 rings and their trio of lead cars all seemed off the pace most of the race, but slowly worked their way forward and into contention as others fell away, and ended as the only manufacturer with 3 cars in the top 10, despite the Lant Motorsport entry of Kelvin Vanderlinde retiring with a tire failure. The quickest manufacturers, Mercedes and Porsche, rounded out the podium with their surviving competitive cars. Estre and Company finished second, with Maxi Book, Hubert Haupt, Thomas Jaeger, and Lucas Stoltz finishing third for the pole-sitting manufacturer. However, crashes for the 3 other Mercedes-AMG entrants, second, third, and fourth respectively, went off, diminished their challenge. The second Manthey Racing Porsche retired after an incident with Richard Leitz at the wheel, though it was already delayed with a puncture. A puncture also ended the race for Fricadelli Racing's 911 GT3R later on, after Matthew Jaminet, Sven Muller, Romain Dumas, and Matt Campbell had been in second place, which is still better than the event for BMW, who out of 6 SP9 Pro entries only saw the Falcon Motorsport car reach the end in 6th position. Within 8 hours of the race, their 4 strongest cars, Schnitzer, Valkenhorst, and the pair of Rover Racing BMWs, had all retired due to issues, only one of which was an accident. The Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus entry ran strongly until it lost several laps due to an incident which was, I believe it actually had to change a headlight cluster. Which meant they actually lost 20 minutes replacing that. And the mighty Manta Foxtail got caught up in an incident before the sunset, to the disappointment and sadness of everyone. However, the most heartwarming moment of the race came just before dawn, when the Foxtail awoke from its 7-hour slumber and came back to turn a few more laps on the Nordschleife before coming back in. On the final lap, the Manta came back out on track to a thunderous applause as Olaf Beckmann, who was driving the car earlier when it had the accident, was became the driver selected to take the Foxtail home. Now, despite providing an excellent race, the ADAC must yet face some difficult questions. Do they ban GT3 cars outright? Slow them even more? Remove some of the lower classes? Increase minimum driver skill? Leave it how it is? Or does GT3 as a whole need a change, as many think? Eventually, these questions will have to be answered, but it is when and not if. Thoughts?
Well, point out, while I didn't actually watch this race, I have seen on social media this race produced the funniest team radio ever seen in motorsport.
Okay.
The BMW, of course, when the bonnet flew up.
Oh yes, the
no team.
yeah, I forgot to mention that the oh, what was the number of that BMW?
Couldn't tell you, to be honest. I didn't see it.
Well, whatever. It was Rudy Adams in the BMW, driving dangerously through the Tiergarten with his bonnet up, weaving over the grass in places, and just getting in people's way, and then just driving into the end of the pit wall. I love the way it just went like bump as it touched it, and the bonnet came down and locked it in. Oh my word! It was like slapstick comedy. It was brilliant. Yeah. Even
This is the funniest team radio I've ever seen. Everyone says, "Oh, Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen have the funniest team radio." No, this was the funniest team radio I've seen as of yet. Actually,
I haven't heard. I haven't heard the team radio. What was it?
You look this up right now. It's absolutely hilarious.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was a team radio. Whatever the case,
team radio.
I'll look that up in a second. As for the GT3 thing, I don't really see why things need to change. I really don't, because the drivers know what they're getting themselves in for. We've always had accidents like that. That's just the Nürburgring. You know, it's not overly dangerous. There were no really serious accidents involving GT3s this year. There have been in the past, but there have been changes put in place, mainly to the spectator areas, I believe, after Jan Mardenborough's 2015 accident. That's pretty much the only incident I can think of. Aside from that, maybe if you were going to change something, you'd have to increase the minimum driver skill, so make sure that the drivers are more experienced by the time they take part. However, in terms of the actual class of the cars, I don't really see where you're getting that from, and why you think something needs to change so urgently. This year was fine.
And I personally think some of the driving standards, and even, I'm sorry, but like, I get that it's a long circuit, but you don't have a safety vehicle in the racing line!
Very true, very true.
Like, I'm sorry, but if Matt Campbell had been a few feet further to the left, he would have rammed that Audi, he would have rammed the Audi, course car, which would have killed him and the drivers of said course car.
Now, I'll tell you why that was. It was because for some reason they hadn't called a code 60 in that area. And that's normally because when they are bringing safety vehicles around, they treat them like any other race car. They just wave a white flag so the drivers know they're there. However, at the time, they were going over a crest over the top of, I think it was Schwedenkreuz. And at that point, of course, it is a blind corner. Matt Campbell was alongside someone else. There really wasn't much else that he could have done. That's not an issue with his car being a GT3. That's just an unfortunate part of the circuit. And to be honest, it may be that at some parts of the circuit, they might need to call a code 60 when a course vehicle is passing through.
And the code 60 actually caught out in one of the scariest crashes. The Porsche Cayman on the Dottinger Hoa. that didn't slow down in time, and ran. Who was the Nissan that he ran that the Cayman ran into? It was
I,
the KCMG car, but I forget who was at the wheel.
I'm not sure, but whatever the case, yeah, that was a pretty.
It was the Australian driver.
Okay, I'm not sure, but whatever the case, that was a scary incident. And I've seen that in the past. You know, when the car in front slows down, especially on a straight, it's very difficult to judge what speed they're actually going. And sometimes, if you don't see the code 60 flag, you can just plow straight into the back of them. And I have seen that. I have seen that before. I remember. I remember one race. Um, it was a race that I was at, the 2015 round of the World Series by Renault at Silverstone, where Prince Ferdinand Habsburg of Austria, yes, he is actually a prince, came flying around came flying around Club Corner. Didn't see that everyone in front of him was slowing in a single-seater race, and went straight over the top of Ben Barnicoat, something like 5 or 6 feet up in the air. So yeah, it does happen. You just need to be careful of the flags and look out.
And I'm just glad that everybody's okay after that, because some of the incidents, especially the one for the Fev Racing stay, were quite dire.
Now that one ended up on the wrong side of the barrier, if I remember correctly.
That was at the
Ardnar Forest.
that was in the forest.
Ardnar Forest, yeah. Well, forest, not forest, so it didn't end up in the trees, luckily. That kind of thing can happen at the Nürburgring. The barriers are very low and quite flimsy, to be honest. Although, luckily, that part of the circuit did do its job in terms of safety, because of course spectators used to be allowed right up next to the barrier there, but now if you look at the footage, they're actually restricted to the top of the bank, meaning that if a car goes over the wall there, it's not going to reach the spectator zone, which is why no spectators were injured there. So to be honest, that part of the track, while the Armco barrier didn't entirely do its job, you can't always guarantee that it will. Good call from the circuit, the people who own the circuit, to put the spectators higher up. Not entirely sure when that was enacted. Probably about a decade ago. But whatever the case, yeah, that saved a few lives.
And by the way, I will say, like, there were 2 stories that really stood out for me, and they were kind of comeback stories. One was, of course, the Manta, and I swear that car, ADAC, if you're listening, first of all, Danke. And second of all, please continue to find a class for that glorious machine to run in. It's almost like the impromptu mascot for the race.
Of course.
And also, like the comeback story that they had, where basically they spend 7 hours in the garage. Like, they spent 7 hours in the garage, and actually the Fev Racing team, the guys that were running the Seat Cupra in the TCR class, actually were spotted helping the Manta get back onto the racetrack. And they did, just around dawn.
Great sportsmanship from them as well. Absolutely love that.
Wow, that's great.
Awesome sportsmanship. And that's honestly, like, that's what racing's all about. It's not all the, like, it's not all the controversy, it's not any of that. It's the sportsmanship at the end of the day. And speaking of which, credit also has to go to the number 89 VW Golf for rebuilding an entire engine in 11 hours, doing an engine replacement.
That's well done.
It was
in
this
11
during the race.
Yes, and this was actually the reason I'm bringing this up is this is the 89 is the all-female VW Golf. It was an all-female team, like female drivers, and female mechanics and engineers, and they got that car to the end. I think in about. I don't think it was classified, but at the same time, just getting it to the finish, no matter where it was quote unquote classified at the end, it doesn't matter. You made it to the end of the Nürburgring 24 hours, and that honestly should be commended.
Of course,
I'm giving
yeah.
the round of applause.
No, the round of applause to anyone who completes the Nürburgring 24 hours, especially someone who's had serious car issues like that, for example. It doesn't matter that they're all female. That's not what we're trying to suggest. But you know, great performance from those girls anyway, and they did a good job.
It wasn't the fact that they were an all-female team. It was the fact that
they repaired
these
an
girls
engine.
They persevered and repaired and basically did an entire engine change in 11 hours, and they actually ran laps quicker than their class leaders.
Okay.
After they got the car back out.
Would have been interesting to see what they could have done without those issues, but that's endurance racing. Anyway,
absolutely, true spirit of endurance racing.
So congrats to them.
Absolutely. And Caitlin, I think it's time for.
Shoot, I forgot the jingle again.
Oh no!
That should be on my routine for setting up the podcast every single week, and I always forget it. And it wouldn't be a Motorsport recently if I didn't forget it, and I am so sorry.
I was actually about to message you saying that just remember the jingle.
That would have been very helpful. Oh god.
Can I do the
Chris
intro?
caught me by surprise.
Okay, well, it is coming up right about whenever it plays.
Miscellaneous stories
On this episode of Motorsport,
and therefore covering OTM.
There we go.
I was just, like, Chris caught me by surprise there. I was gonna message you saying get it ready, but then he was just like, now it's time for. I was like, oh no,
Oh, so that was my error. I apologize.
No, it was my error. Don't worry.
It wasn't.
Right.
Anyway. Right, let's get into our miscellaneous stories and points for Mr. Leffel covering our TM Bing for this week. And this is almost entirely written by Caitlin, so well done for doing miscellaneous this week. So I'll let you take the first story of the week with Formula One.
Okay, so we have a few. Firstly, Formula One may be moving testing back to Silverstone. Of course, since Formula One has moved removed the Spanish Grand Prix effectively, probably, and replaced it with the Dutch Grand Prix, they don't want to continue testing at Barcelona, so they are considering moving testing back to Silverstone. Much like, of course, Formula One did used to test at Silverstone plenty of years ago. However, I think this is a bad idea. I think that Barcelona was a perfect place for testing because it was such a versatile circuit with so many different parts. You know, different types of corner you can.
It was
test
a mix of
on.
everything.
Yeah, mix of everything. That's what I meant. Plus, I also think it's a good idea to test on a circuit that you don't race on, because then you don't end up with teams who know their cars inside out and have no setup work left to do by the time you actually get to those events, because that's when you get dull and predictable racing, much like we tend to see at the Spanish Grand Prix. And to be honest, I really do not want to see Silverstone turning into one of those races, as the British Grand Prix is my favourite Grand Prix. On the upper hand, though, Formula One does tend to offer free tickets to anyone who buys tickets for the British Grand Prix to the pre-season testing. So that may well convince me to, convince me to actually go again. I just, if I can actually afford it, that is. Whatever the case, I think that ultimately it's a bad idea for the sport to move testing back to Silverstone. I think they should keep that at Barcelona. The next
I think we
Formula...
discussed this before, actually. So we said that I remember discussing this when Spain was cancelled, and yeah, we definitely don't want to see Silverstone turn into a very boring race.
let me just double check actually to see if the Spanish Grand Prix absolutely is not returning next year. Okay, so it doesn't have a contract yet, but it also hasn't been confirmed removed. However, it's been effectively confirmed removed, as that's what the Dutch Grand Prix was brought in to replace. Also, I'm very much not looking to the Dutch Grand Prix. Well, okay, I always look forward to a Grand Prix, but I don't think the Dutch Grand Prix is going to be a good one. Anyway.
Can I just say,
Go ahead.
Personally, I think winter testing should happen in Canada, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
We have snow, and if Formula One driver can drive in the snow, they deserve to be world champion.
That is a bad idea.
They can drive anywhere.
That is a bad idea because F1 cars cannot drive in the snow, and because
yes, they can.
And because they won't be racing
yes, they can.
in the in the snow.
Formula One
imagination,
snowplows.
Caitlin. Caitlin, you need some imagination. I'm still planning my Antarctic Grand Prix.
Okay. But whatever the
might be
case,
an interesting one.
the actual reason they have to hold it in Europe is because that's where all of the F1 teams are based, so they don't want to spend loads going to far-flown events just to test. Which is actually why they've been considering taking away the end of season Abu Dhabi test as well. But whatever the case,
Thank God. Maybe they can take away the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but
that's not going to happen.
Well, it should. So
But whatever the case, there you go. Does anyone have anything else to say about F1 testing maybe returning to Silverstone?
I think it should go to. I think it should go to Estoril.
I think Barcelona is perfect, if you ask me.
Estoril is Estoril was like the place to test before Barcelona took over. It was only like a few years. It's only been at Barcelona for. Oh.
Do you mean
I think since?
Do you mean Jerez, Chris?
No, I mean Estoril, Portugal.
Okay, because they've been testing at Jerez quite a lot.
And Estoril, and also Paul Ricard. Throughout the
Paul
years.
Ricard is a good test track. Yeah. Anyway.
It's only good for test track, but
I disagree. So long as they put a strip of grass by the side of the track, then it may actually become a good Grand Prix track.
And get rid of the epileptic, and get rid of the blue squiggles that cause epileptic seizures to anyone who looks at it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, don't like those.
I think we should move on to our second story in the miscellaneous stories and points of Jessica before covering now TM.
Okay, it's another F1 story. Paddy Lowe has confirmed that he will not return to Williams. That's not really a shock. Let's face it, who expected him to, and who would want to work for Williams?
Really, anyone at the moment.
Nothing
I'm
more to say
surprised it
about
took
that.
him this line. I'm surprised it took him this long.
Okay. Yeah, nothing really more to say about that. Bye-bye, Paddy Lowe. On to
F2.
Yes, on to Formula 2. We have a couple of driver changes. I'll actually get on to the most significant one second. Firstly, we have Ryan Tveta replacing Ralph Boschung at Trident, and to be honest, I don't think that's going to make much of a difference, because neither Tveta nor Boschung have what it takes to excel in Formula 2. I'd love to be proven wrong. Tveta is a nice guy from what I know, although him and Boschung have never really excelled in the junior categories. I'm not expecting that much to come from that. But yeah, anyway, that's
Tveta actually, when Tveta was running in Star Mazda, he actually gave me his business card.
Oh, nice.
And told me to follow him on every social media. Like to try and get people to follow him. And honestly, that's if you're starting out and you need like a social media presence, I admired what Tveter did. Like he was running in Star Mazda at the time, or what is now Indy Pro 2000. But
Yeah, well, whatever the case, I'm not expecting him to do that much better than Boschung or better at all. Although it will be interesting to see. Next up, we have another Formula 2 driver change, and one that's been talked about a lot. Mahavir Raghunathan. Now, let me retell you the story of Mahavir Raghunathan. He joined his team, MP Motorsport, after 3 years, well, 2 and a bit years, sorry, out of the junior categories. But yeah, returned due to his money, of course, no other reason. He immediately proved that he was going to be several seconds per lap off the pace of the leaders, and over a second off the pace of pretty much anyone else, except for sometimes Tatiana Calderon. At the first round of the series, he finished last in both races and made a name for himself by picking up a penalty for passing the checkered flag twice. Basically, he went around too many times after the checkered flag had fallen. Then, when we went to Baku, went straight on down an escape road, and his team had to instruct him to turn the wheel because
you have to turn the wheel.
as he was trying to recover, he obviously forgot what his steering wheel did and got himself completely stuck. At Monaco, he rammed another driver into the wall at the hairpin and was still dead slow. And finally, at the circuit, Paul Ricard, he has picked up 9 penalty points in just one race by disobeying virtual safety car procedure. I don't get how you do that, but whatever the case, he has done. As a result, he has been given a race ban, and
What a career!
to be honest,
What a career!
No!
absolutely. To be honest, I can't see him coming back again from this. I don't see that his team would take him. Whatever the case, that's that for Mahavir Raghunathan. I'm surprised it wasn't done sooner. And he will be replaced in that seat by Patricio O'Ward, which is very interesting, because O'Ward is a driver who I'm sure can really surprise a lot of people with his talents. I'm expecting him to probably be in, or quite possibly be in Formula 1 next year with Toro Rosso. And yeah, I'd love to see how he does in Formula 2. To be honest, I'm not expecting him to do that well on his first weekend, because it is his first weekend in Formula 2. The other drivers have had much more practice. We don't tend to see drivers coming in later and doing brilliantly. But yeah, Pat O'Ward, that's going to be interesting. Do any of you have any thoughts on the Raghunathan Award thing?
I'm sad.
Well, yeah, because you want him to stay in the US, but whatever's
No,
best
no, no.
for his
I mean,
career.
I mean for Raghunathan.
Yes.
Because what a career! Because he's had such a brilliant career up to this point.
Because he's an absolute legend. And
Absolute
few people
legend.
actually I got a follow from a Twitter. I got a follow on Twitter from a Twitter handle known as Raghunathan fans.
Nice.
They actually just did a tweet 7 hours ago saying Raghunathan should be on the grid right now. Join the movement against this unjust treatment of Mahavir Raghunathan. Justice for Mahavir.
Oh my goodness gracious me!
I'm so sorry to Mahavir if you're listening to this. Nothing personal. But anyway,
I love it.
that's
Right, well,
that's that.
Mahavir, we love you. Motorsport recently loves you.
I do have another update from Formula 2, because one of their races at the Red Bull Ring has already taken place. Unfortunately, Patricio Ward had a bad race. I'm not entirely sure why. I haven't seen the replay. He actually finished dead last, so he's filling the shoes of Mahavir Raghunathan. I really hope that's not going to be lasting form, because I really think that Award's got it in him to be an amazing driver. And to be honest, it's quite upsetting that he's not done well. And I think part of that is probably because, as far as I know, he's never raced in Europe before, so he would never have raced on that track. Wait, no, he has raced in Europe, but I don't think he's ever raced on the Red Bull Ring circuit. Whatever the case, Nobuharu Matsushita got his first victory of the season, putting him up into 8th in the championship, and that was done earlier today. Second place, Luca Giotto. He's 5th in the championship. And third place was championship leader Nick De Vries. Other championship contenders actually had a pretty dodgy race. Latifi, Sete Camara and Aitken, second, third and fourth in the championship. Only 9th, 5th and 10th in the race. Meaning the top 3 in the race were Matsushita, Giotto, De Vries, Hubert and Sete Camara. And the top 5 in the championship are De Vries, Latifi, Sete Camara, Aitken and Giotto. Race 2 is taking place tomorrow. Pole sitter will be Jordan King alongside Louis Delatraz. That is how it's going to take place, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Also in Formula 3, they had a race today as well. The race winner was Yuri Vips, followed by Max Futrell, Marcus Armstrong, Jehan Daruvala. There you go, that's hard to say when you've got the hiccups. And Robert Schwartzman, our championship leader, was 5th in the race, meaning the championship is Schwartzman, Daruvala, Vips, Armstrong, and Piquet, the top 5. Tomorrow's race will have Lirim Zendelli on pole position after taking his first points of the season last time out, and he will be alongside Jake Hughes. That's how that stands. And that is your update from Formula 2 and Formula 3. Any
on to some
thoughts?
Super Formula news. Oh, I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment on Formula 2.
Okay.
Can I just say, I think I know what the problem is with Pato.
What's that?
I think his confidence is kind of a little shattered at the minute after he missed the Indy 500.
Quite possibly. He certainly hasn't seemed to do as well since, and I really hope he gets that back, because I genuinely think a lot of Pato would, and I think he has it in him to be potentially even a Formula 1 driver. I just think he needs to get his confidence back and find some pace.
Move on to the Super Formula news.
Okay.
I'll do this one.
Go ahead, Chris.
Dan Ticktum has lost his Super Formula seat due to some poor results and will likely lose his space on the Red Bull driver program. All I can say to that is, hallelujah!
And it has just been confirmed he has been dropped.
I have no sympathy for him.
Now, Dan Ticktum has done some pretty awful things, or has done a pretty awful thing in the past. I don't think that defines who he is now. So unless he does something else, I'm gonna let him off that.
His arrogant attitude when he was trying to get super license points, by finishing second in what was it? The Asia series. Where he refused to go onto the podium. And like whined about it because he was second to Mick Schumacher.
I don't think you're thinking of the right guy, because unless
No, it was Ticktum.
Do you mean? Okay, well the only thing
Ticktum did something in Asia, like thinking China just this past winter.
I mean,
We don't know for sure, do we? So there's not really much we can say about that.
looking at his career results, I don't see anything he's done in Asia apart from the Macau Grand Prix and Super Formula in the last year. But whatever the case,
He thought Formula. I think he thought that F3 Asia was going to be easy super license points for him.
He didn't do F3 Asia. I think
Or
you're thinking
whatever the.
he did F3 Europe. I think you may be thinking of the wrong driver, but whatever the case, that's anyway. Dan Ticktum. I honestly think that Red Bull should be more patient with their drivers. Super Formula is a tough series, especially since Team Mugen isn't really one of the top Super Formula teams, and they're not really expected to do that well. Um, Plus, Dan Ticktum has done much better things in Europe on relevant European tracks that Formula One are actually going to be racing at. You know, he was second in European F3 last year. I think that he should have done a year of F2, and I honestly think that Red Bull should allow him to do a year of F2 before dropping him this way. I think that Ticktum would have been an up and coming talent, and I think this is Red Bull's loss. And I hate the way that Red Bull does this, because then they complain that they've got no drivers left. They used to be one of the most fruitful and successful young driver programs in all of motorsports. You know, they produced Daniel Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel, Max Verstappen. You know, all of those guys came through the Red Bull young driver program, and yet somehow now they've got no drivers. And that is entirely because they're scouting the wrong people, they're not being patient enough, they're dropping them too early, and they're just running out of people. So honestly, that's entirely on Red Bull if you ask me. And in my opinion, despite the poor showing in Super Formula this year, they should not have dropped Ticktum.
By the way, the incident with basically he apparently, according to articles I've read, he was going to be competing in the Asia Formula 3 Winter Series.
Okay.
He retired from the first race at Buriram with a damaged radiator, was 6th in race 2 after being penalized for a track limits infringement, finished 2nd in the 3rd race, leaving him 6th in the championship with 2 rounds left. He actually said in an interview, quote, "It's been a disaster for most of the race. It was like it was raining for me because there was a lot of oil coming out of the back of Yifei Yi's car. If you look at the front of my car, you'll see oil on top of all the oil. So for me, there was something. Apart from that, there's nothing else to say. 2nd is not where I should be finishing. In the other 2 races I had on the weekend were a word I can't say because we're on the thing, set of tires, and I got hit off by my teammate in the first one. So that's it. Disastrous weekend for me, and yeah, that's it really."
Okay, so he had
basically, and he refused, and instead of celebrating the only podium of the weekend, he walked off and didn't go onto the podium.
I have known drivers to do that in the past, and that, you know, yeah, it's unprofessional and yeah, it's a little bit whiny, but to be honest, I can understand the feeling, and the point still stands. You know, Ticktum hasn't done anything outrageous since his MSA incident, and I honestly think that Red Bull are at a loss for dropping him.
Well, you shouldn't bring on, as you said, they are obviously scouting the wrong people, and then yeah, and as you said, they then wonder why they've got no drivers. So anyway,
like, that was one of the huge problems I have with them signing Pato.
Well,
because
That's
they're
not
just
really
going
the
to
wrong
chew him up
person.
and spit him out, and like I don't want to see that, but You
don't
never
that
know.
for sure. You don't know that for sure. I think that's actually a pretty good bet with Pato Award because he's been really, really promising, and it's actually good to give someone like him a chance. Like even if it doesn't work out, he still probably has an IndyCar drive to fall back on. He's shown that he's a talented driver, and I think the Patricio Award move might actually be a really good one.
Now, I find it really, really interesting that they have dropped Dan Ticktum, but somehow not Sean Galile.
It's all that KFC money.
Exactly.
Money.
Right, should we move on to the W Series story that we have
We
here?
shall.
Okie dokie. W Series is going to be hosting a non-championship race at Assen. It's going to be testing a bunch of features that they're hoping to introduce, including a full reverse grid, which I think is a really bad idea because when you get a full reverse grid, drivers start to drop out of the first race on purpose if it's not going well enough to get a good race 2 result, and as a result, I'm expecting the race 2 victory to be pretty easy for someone. But whatever the case, yeah, nothing really more to say about that. It's just going to be a non-championship race at. Did I? Is it? Okay, let me research.
The reverse grid does sort of work if it's cut off at a certain point. Like
yes, top 8
the
or
World
so.
Touring Car Championship does that, or what is now WTCR. They've done that for years, where they've had basically a the top 10 finishers in race 1 would be reversed. So the winner from race 1 would start 10th, and the 10th place finisher would start on pole. However, I'm not sure if it would work here in single seaters.
I mean,
Now,
I can tell you from experience because I have raced in sim races with partially reverse grids. It does work and it does produce some exciting racing. Yeah, it's a little bit artificial, but as someone who tends to finish about 10th, I'm not complaining. If you get what I'm saying there.
you've won a couple of poles, have you?
Yes, reverse grid poles. Yeah, but whatever the case, no, it does kind of work. Not sure if it'll work in real life. It's yet to be seen. Of course, the grid is going to be reversed from the previous day's race, and that previous day's race will be a race that counts towards the championship. That's the main race at Assen. But whatever, we've got the Norris Ring coming up next, and to be honest, I'm expecting a bit of a wreck fest because Norris Ring always tends to encourage silly dive bomb maneuvers that wipe out 3 cars, and when you have a grid of single seaters like this, to be honest, I am going to be surprised if that doesn't occur again.
And that's why we love the Norris Ring, because it is, and especially one of my favorite things about the Norris Ring is like the big stack up at the first hairpin.
If this was Formula E, we'd all be complaining about it.
But the Norris Ring is better.
Oh my word, Formula E should go to the Norris Ring.
Formula E to the Norris Ring, you say?
That's actually a really good idea.
I think
Formula E
should
to the
just go to
Norris
a racetrack.
Ring.
I reckon Formula E should just go to a racetrack in general, actually, because I think these street circuits are just ridiculous now. They're way too narrow. I think it's time for a proper circuit.
I mean, the Norris Ring is still a street circuit, but the good thing about that is that there is room for cars to get around without all piling into each other, despite the fact they still do sometimes. But anyway. Just as a reminder on the W Series, so far we've had 2 wins to Jamie Chadwick and a 2nd place, so Chadwick's at the top of the championship, followed by Beitski Visser, Marta Garcia, Alex Powell and Fabian Volvend, and those are the drivers who have scored podiums so far. Sorry Jack, moving on.
And Chadwick... And Chadwick actually won her class at the Nürburgring 24 Hours as did Rahel Fry
Okay, congrats.
as well.
Okay, Jack, sorry.
Go ahead.
Right. I actually have a news story that's and now I'm actually glad I get to tell this. So when Triple Crown Racing first started out, I partnered up with a page on Instagram called F1 India, and that's in our little group on Instagram called Racers Alliance, and we all help to promote each other. However, about a month ago, F1 India was yeeted off the internet by FOM, unfortunately. However, F1 India are standing in defiance of FOM and have returned with a new page. They've decided to come back, which is absolutely fantastic news. And after the podcast, I'll add a link to their page in the description below, so you can go check them out. Go give them a follow. Let's get them back to where we were, and I'd say with them back, that's F1 pages 1, FOM nil. So I'd say that's pretty good news.
I just actually sent them a follow right now.
Excellent.
Who are
That's the
F1
next
India? Are they like a group of F1 fans in India? Or...
Well, this is a F1 news page on Instagram based out of India,
Okay.
and they were yeeted off the internet by FOM because FOM are annoying. But they have decided to come back, which is absolutely superb news. Because we don't want pages getting killed by FOM. I think and then I also think that FOM needs to realize what fair use is. Stop deleting pages. And I'm not sure if they've ever heard of a law called fair use, but fair use does exist, and
Admittedly,
that needs to be taken into consideration.
fair use rules do vary from country to country. But anyway,
But it seems to affect everyone though. Like it doesn't matter who you are. You're all just going to get deleted if you post anything that's Formula One related by the looks of things. It's rather annoying actually.
I was quite.
That's why
I was quite fortunate actually, because when I posted my random Grand Prix race reviews, which I saw you saw, Jack, thank you. Anyway, when I posted that, I did have it demonetized by FOM, but luckily they didn't take it down, and I was really worried that they would, but they didn't. So thank you for that, FOM.
a well done piece, I may say, Caitlin.
Thank you, Chris. I don't mind that it's demonetized either, because I wasn't making any money out of it, so it doesn't make any difference to me.
What's your next one?
I don't know, because I'm trying to find a Grand Prix without a watermark on it.
I suggested the 2015 Hungarian Grand Prix, which is an absolutely amazing race. So I'd
go one better and say the 2014 Bahrain Grand Prix, one of the best in the turbo era.
2014 Bahrain Grand Prix is actually my favorite Grand Prix of the hybrid era. I don't know. I might just give up and make a video with like a big watermark in the corner. Who knows? But we'll see.
That's where you can crop it out.
I can't
just
do
crop
that.
out the watermark.
I'm not good enough at editing for that.
We'll just. No, never mind. Anyway, we won't go into the editing specifics. I don't actually know what you use, so.
Movie Maker, lol.
I use iMovie for all my stuff. So, anyway, right. Should we move on to some sports car racing stuff?
Yes.
Because there's some interesting news relating to the Spa 24 Hours.
Yep. It will have a very quick and small Brazilian in driving a giant boat. Pippo Durrani has been tagged to join Bentley's to finish off Bentley's Spa 24-hour lineup. And he will be in, as I check Twitter. As I check the Twitter, donde esta Twitter? Aha, here we go. He will be in...
Hey, Bentley!
He will be in the number 107, in the number 110 Bentley, with Andy Suchek and Lucas Ordonez.
Now, interestingly, Pipo Derani is a driver who is not unused to endurance racing at Spa. Of course, in 2015, he actually won the LMP2 class of the 6 hours of Spa for G-Drive. So definitely a driver who knows his way around the Spa circuit. I was trying to look up his Formula 3 results at Spa, but it turns out they didn't actually race there that year. The year
Has
that
he ever raced the GT though? Has he ever raced a GT?
Yes.
He has. He did the 24 Hours of Le Mans last year for
And
AF
this
Corsa. Oh yeah, and this year for Risi. You're right. But I don't think he's ever driven a. I don't think he's ever driven a GTE at Spa. Wait, he has finished 4th in 2017 with the 4GT.
And okay, so the other lineups of Car 107 will still be Stephen Kane, Jules Gounon, and Jordan Pepper. Maxime Soule is in the 108 with Alex Buncombe and Marcus Paltala. And the 109 will be Rodrigo Baptista, Callum McLeod, and Seb Morris.
You know something that I've just realised by checking Wikipedia and stuff. Pipo Derani, he actually, well, I already knew this. He actually had quite a poor single-seater career. He never did well in single-seaters, and he only started to excel when he got into sports car racing. He has actually never won a championship in anything, whether that's a team championship or as a single driver. He's never won anything since potentially his karting days, because of course he had a pretty meh single-seater time.
Well, I think his team's doing pretty well in IMSA this year, so that might be about to
He may
change.
actually, yeah, that might change because if he and Felipe Nasr continue to be consistent podium finishers, they'll be very fast at they'll be contending for the championship in by the time we get to Petit Le Mans. And maybe we could see Pipo Derani with a championship trophy on his mantelpiece to go with his Sebring and Daytona victories.
Anyway, we'll move on to our final story of the day, which is actually in relation to Rich Energy. Now, I'm not sure if you want to take this story, Caitlin, because I think you might know a bit more about it.
Rich Energy have finally lost their court appeal after losing their logo case. Rich Energy are a bunch of clowns. They like to
Tell
post.
us how you really feel.
They like to post really like childish, juvenile statements and just things on their social media pages. Everything they've ever tweeted about this court case has been accompanied by a picture of two boxers going at it, as if this is some kind of heroic gladiatorial fight. No, it isn't. You're getting sued, mate. Like, what the heck? They also tweeted something really stupid at
F1 testing when they said that, "Oh, we're faster than Red Bull."
They did, but they also tweeted another stupid thing in regards to white bikes relatively recently. I'm just trying to find that out. Just trying to find that once again. Basically they called them like they called them Mickey Mouse or something. It was really weird.
Jesus.
But
So that's a bit strange.
You know,
yeah, Rich Energy, bunch of clowns, hate them, get them off the grid.
you know, it actually kind of reminds me a little bit. Remember, Caitlin, I was telling you about Mr. Van Rossum
I remember the name.
from Onyx, the Moneytron guy.
Oh, yeah,
that was
I remember.
the Moneytron guy who was a libertarian and a fraudster and basically it seems like the second coming of Van Rossum, a scam artist coming in.
I found it.
It wouldn't be surprising, by the way, if the founder of Rich Energy occupies one of Her Majesty's prisons.
Okay, at Rich Energy on the 10th of June 2019.
Oh, no.
Enjoy the free PR while you can, guys, referring to white bikes. Those with an IQ higher than their age realize you are Mickey Mouse. Oh, how we will laugh in due course. We are actually investing money in F1 whilst you are investing zero. Total parasites who knew about us for 2 years before piping up. Hashtag F1.
What? I'm sorry, that is incredibly childish. That is, like, I'm sorry, I've seen
Infantile.
dogs
Absolutely.
be more mature than that.
Can we?
That was.
By the way, Jack.
That was directed at white bikes, of course.
Yeah. Jack. Can we do a can we do a scam artist? Can we do like a series where we do like a series on scam artists in Formula One? Because I've got some good ones from racing past.
Maybe I do have a lot of content to work through. So if we did that, it would be
Make your own
quite a
channel,
bit
Chris.
far in the
Oh wait,
future.
you have.
I have.
Let's go check that out. You post some old sports car races and stuff. And I think on that note, it's just about time to end. We'll roll the credits in just a moment's time, but I have a couple people to thank first. Thank you to Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary for joining me on the mic today. Thank you to Freya Edwards and thank you to Freya Edwards and SRA Smoking Puppy for helping write some of the articles today. So Freya did the Formula E article and Smoking Puppy did the N24 article. Thank you to Finnick Arrow who did the graphics you see on screen today. Obviously, we didn't have his posters today, but that's a little bit unfortunate. But still, he did do the graphics you currently see on your screen now. And I have been Jack McKenzie. Thank you very much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Ta-ta.
Ta-ra.